Martinus Cosmology podcast, a podcast dedicated to the thoughts and ideas of the Danish spiritual writer Martinus. We are broadcasting to you today from the Martinus Center in Klint, Denmark, at the beginning of the Easter week, where about 150 volunteers have turned up to look after the center, to maintain it, look after the gardens and the buildings and so on. My name is Mary McGovern and I'm your host for today. And I have with me Tryggvi Gudmundsson from Iceland. And you may remember Tryggvi from a previous podcast we did about a little over a year ago about the cosmic message of Christmas. But today we're going to talk about the nature of God. Nothing less. Welcome, Tryggvi.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary.
So, Tryggvi, could you tell me what was Martinus's understanding of God?
Well, he had, first of all, it's a huge subject, the nature of God. We could start with when Martinus was a child. He hadn't had his cosmic experience yet. He had a very intimate relationship, you could call, with God. He didn't know that God was there, but he felt there was a God. And when he came in a situation in his childhood when he was in doubt how to do the right thing, he always imagined what would Jesus do. So he had straight from childhood a very, very strong inner moral compass of what to do, and inspired by Jesus. And then later on, when he was about 30 years old, as you know, he had his great cosmic breakthrough, his cosmic experience. And in that experience, which opened his cosmic senses, so he had, as a very unusual thing, he gained a permanent cosmic consciousness. Because we have, throughout history of mankind, we have a lot of prophets and seers and yogis that have had cosmic glimpses. But it's very seldom that somebody has a permanent cosmic consciousness. And in this experience, he experienced that the whole universe is a living being. And a being that is without a beginning and without an end, and is eternal. And we can talk about the structure of this being, but and very very shortly put, that this being is an eternal living being that has a eternal part. And a timely part, a physical or psychic part.
A temporal part.
A temporal part,
yeah,
yes. Yeah. But there's only one being, and he experienced that all living beings are part of this huge, huge living being, which mankind has, through centuries, called God. So he experienced this living spirit through everything, that it's in everything.
So God is in everything and everyone, in every plant and animal and human being, in every person who behaves badly as well as in every person who behaves well, and so on.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
I'm saying that, Martinus is saying that everything is God. That God is, in reality there's no living being that's outside of God. There's no existence outside of God. There's only God. And all the living beings, we see plants, like you said, and animals and planets. He says that all these entities, planets and the living beings that constitute our body, the organs and cells and so on, these are all living beings, and they are in their own development. Eternal development. So yeah, he experienced that there's only one living being. So we are all part of this living being.
In the Bible, it says something about in Him we live and move and have our being.
Exactly. We are all living in this great organism which is God.
Yeah, and we're both moving in daily life, but we're also moving in evolution. We're evolving within this eternal organism, as I understand it.
Yeah, exactly. So you could say that his view on God, of course, changed. That when he got as he explains it, he got this cosmic consciousness. So he could, he had all of a sudden he had access to the which he called the ocean of wisdom. So if he had a question, he had a fully developed capacity of intuition. So all the questions he had, he got immediate answers. So he used the next 60 years or something writing down these thoughts, the structure of this living being of the Godhead, and how it's structured, and how are we in communication with this living being, and how we are a part of it, and so on. So he explains that there are in nature we have laws for nature. Nature, how do you say in English? Nature laws or physical laws. Natural laws.
Yeah.
So he just expands that and explains that actually they are the spiritual laws, eternal principles which are behind all the physical laws. And these eternal principles are governing, the eternal evolution, and how we move from a primitive state of mind and primitive forms of organism and become more highly intellectual. And he says all mankind, actually all living beings, we're on this road of evolution, and mankind will eventually gain the same cosmic consciousness as Martinus and Jesus and other world redeemers before in history.
So when Martinus says that he gained cosmic consciousness, is there any way that we can check that or confirm it? What was his own attitude to him saying that to us, that he had got cosmic consciousness?
Well, firstly, I would like to say that Martinus' purpose for writing the books and coming here as you could say like a guest teacher for mankind, his purpose is not to make a new religion, a new sect. It was really on his heart that we should not make a new religion out of this. This is a gift for humankind, and we can use it if we like. If we feel inspired by his thoughts, we can use it. And if you're not inspired by it, just leave it by. But eventually he explains how his thoughts and this eternal world picture will, although eventually become the foundation for the human culture that would eventually develop on Earth.
So that's a very high goal.
That's a high goal, but yeah, and he explains how he sometimes takes some things from the Bible and explains the holy day of Sabbath is how do you say the day?
Sabbath?
Yeah, the seventh day of creation.
Yeah.
Is talking about this paradise. The Bible is talking about the paradise that we will eventually experience on Earth, where every living being will live in peace and harmony.
Yeah.
And he's telling us and showing how the road goes to this goal, that we will eventually, all men will gain this cosmic consciousness, and we will create a perfect world on Earth. But until this point, back to your question, Mary, of course we cannot be sure if Martinus is if he's right about these things, because we haven't ourselves. Some people maybe have some experiences, but there must be a kind of a theory for us. And I would say so much that of course there's a reason for this thought and this world picture, why it resonates within some people and not within other people. And that has something to do with your previous life experience. but you cannot be sure before you have the experience of he's talking about cosmic glimpses. When we come further in our evolution, we will start to have these cosmic glimpses, and in a one tiny second we will, for example, experience to be eternal beings. We will ourselves experience to be fully one with the universe, this living organism we should call God. Like Jesus said, "My and the Father and I, we are one." So Martinus explains every living being will actually, in the future, come to experience this unity, being one with the Father, being one with the spirit of the universe.
And these cosmic glimpses, I know he says that the conditions for getting cosmic glimpses are a very pure heart and a very balanced mind. He said you won't get a cosmic glimpse when you're angry or intolerant and so on. But of course you can get cosmic glimpses before you're perfect, morally perfect. But in moments when you're in balance, then he says that your psyche can open up for these cosmic glimpses.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a glimpse, so it can light up your life for quite a while, but then the glimpse fades as you're what he calls the guardians of the threshold. The dark sides in your consciousness come to the fore again and shut out the light, so to speak, until you reach a balanced state again when you can open up for these experiences. Of course, I'm talking from theory here because I haven't had these experiences myself, but it makes sense to me that it's a moral progression that's needed.
Yeah, exactly.
In order to,
and the humble mind, you said the purity and a certain intellectual standard, a humane standard. He's always talking about the ability to feel empathy toward all living beings. And this pure heart you're talking about and the humbleness, that will lead to this ability to feel empathy for every living being.
Every living being.
That this neighborly love we know from our own tradition from the Bible.
And of course this pure heart has to be balanced by intelligence.
Yeah.
So that you're not just doing things because you don't have the heart to say no. If you see that it's really not the most beneficial thing in the long run, then you will say no.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
He uses a term, foolish kindness.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you have a child who always wants to eat sweets and never vegetables, you're not going to do the child any favors by just saying yes all the time, even though the child would like it.
Yeah.
You have to say no. You also have to eat the vegetables. So this love has to be balanced with intelligence.
Yeah. So. With a greatly developed feeling, like you said, the heart and intelligence, to be able to understand some intellectual analysis. But the history is full of examples of people have gained these cosmic glimpses. The whole yoga tradition in India, and also we have great Christian mystics in the European history. And we can see it's actually funny to see that some of these people are a little bit more on the feeling side, and some of the Christian mystics, for example, and some of the yogi mystics, and then there is a really emotional experience for them, and they don't necessarily have a huge terminology to explain. But if you have a person, still balanced person, but person who is a little bit more over in the intelligence weight in the consciousness, then we have like a philosophers, and they would probably try to make some kind of a logical or philosophical explanation, terminology to explain what they experienced. But the main thing is that they, like you said, they experience this. You can experience, for example, the cosmic principles of being one with God, and experiencing, for example, the principle of reincarnation as a reality. You just see it as a reality. You experience it as a reality. But these experiences of light, like you said, Mary, they can also light up your life for some years or a while, but they can also tell you or show you that there's some darkness in your mind still, because this light will actually highlight the areas in your consciousness that you haven't worked on too much, the darker sides in your personalities, and you called it the guardians
of the threshold.
Or threshold, yeah.
It's a term from the Bible, but it's a term Martinus uses to describe these dark sides of our personalities that prevent us from crossing the threshold to oneness with God, or to cosmic consciousness, to complete initiation.
Exactly, they are protecting us from our own underdeveloped sides in our personality to become too huge.
So, how do you see Martinus's understanding of God or concept of God differing from the concept of God that's presented by Christianity and other religions?
This is a very interesting question. Well, Martinus's concept of God actually, although Martinus he feels obliged to explain the cosmic being of Christ and his example, because Christ has a really huge role to play in this development of the spiritual development of humankind. His concept of God it's actually more like the Eastern concept of God. In Christianity, we have a God that creates the whole world, and then he draws back. He becomes a pure transcendent spirit, a pure spirit. Sometimes he interacts with his creation, his work of creation, and sends his son Jesus, or maybe hearing prayers from people. But basically he's pure spirit, because people in those times when Christianity was started, they couldn't believe how God could have anything to do with the darkness and the evil in mankind. So we had to make some kind of a theological structure that kept God perfect and pure spirit. And the solution was that the for example, Augustine, one of the greatest church leaders or fathers in the 4th century, his conclusion in opposition to the Gnostic was that this evil had to come from man himself, that God was actually perfect. So you have a God is kind of a pure spirit, separated from his creations, although he can intervene. But in the Eastern traditions, and the Christian concept is called theism. And in the Eastern traditions, you have this idea of pantheism. Pantheism, yes. Where God is actually inherent in the creation. He is both the creation and the spirit at the same time. So in that sense, Martinus' sense of God being inside of everything, being actually everything, looks more like the some of the Eastern traditions from the yoga philosophy and the Vedic conception of concept of God, and they actually have a very very similar thought of school about the concept of God. And the eternal part of God and the timely part of God, and how God, humans go through this huge spiral circles, as Martinus explains. And in the Vedic tradition, they called it the days of Brahma and the nights of Brahma, eternal circulations of the spiral circulation. So there's a lot of like Martinus says, there's his mission or his task to come down here and write this world picture. He says actually that this is the first time that the whole world picture is giving to mankind and openly. But my point is that through history, and Martinus also confirms this, that through history there's a lot of elements from this cosmic worldview that actually have been presented for mankind through different prophets and seers. You talk about this, a tradition, the perennial philosophy, Aldous Huxley, and the same tradition, that there actually is a cosmology, there is a world picture that is like eternal and true, and we find bits of pieces of this eternal picture in different cultures. But
Martinus, you're saying, puts it all together.
He puts it all together, and he adds some things.
Yes.
And I think after have spent 40 years writing and reading Martinus and studying the different traditions of religion and philosophies on Earth, I think it's right when he says that this is the first time that the whole world picture is gathered and manifested on Earth for all humankind, not for just a few priests in Egypt or through a few Brahmins in India or something like that. So, but he adds some elements, the sexual evolution and the principle of the pole principle, how we are evolving, and how sexuality is, or the sexual energy, the creation force of the universe is a really important thing to understand when we understand the eternal evolution from darkness to light, from light to darkness. And the principle of contrast, how we are always on the way to something that we desire, because this principle of contrast, but also principle of satiation and hunger and satiation. How do you say?
Hunger and satiation.
Hunger and satiation. Yes, thank you. So we're always on the move. We are in always. We are going from the spiritual world, we are devolving into the material world, becoming minerals, plants, animals, and then we become a man and gain cosmic consciousness. But in the animal kingdom, we experience the depth of the darkness and the evil, and create suffering from each other, and we experience the consequences of creating all this suffering from other people, and we get them back. And from this, getting the suffering back, the karmic reactions, we develop the empathetic state of mind. And when we gain cosmic consciousness, we have a fully developed empathy ability towards all living being. And then we come into the spiritual world again, and climax in the spiritual world. And then there's the principle of hunger and satiation again. Then we want to go back into the material world. But these are huge spiral circles, which Martinus calls them. But the main contrast principle is this darkness and the physical world and the suffering, and going up to the light where we are spiritual beings and being one with God. And how is it Martinus says in English? We are God's primary sense organs. Yeah.
Yes, and he also says that without the principle of contrast, we would experience nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
This experience of darkness, which bothers us so much. I mean, we just have to look at the news and we see war and refugees and natural catastrophes and illnesses and unemployment and political problems all over the world, and marriages going to pieces and so on. So that there are, we don't lack darkness in the world. There's a lot of suffering going on.
Yeah.
But he says that it's without that sort of backdrop of darkness, we could never experience light.
Yeah.
So to the degree that we experience darkness, we're creating the prerequisites for experiencing light. So it's like yin and yang. It's two sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
They're two absolutely necessary prerequisites for experiencing life at all.
Yeah. And that's a point worth mentioning, that in the Eastern traditions, we don't have this problem with God being are part of of everything, because God is everything. So good and evil is also part of God's mentality. And actually, if you look at the Bible, I think Satan as an entity is only mentioned about 3 times. And in the Bible, he's actually a messenger from God.
Oh, really?
He's not, and later when Paulus and Augustine is fighting the Gnostics, he comes up with this notion that because they can't grasp and they can't explain how can God be fully loving and caring and all knowing, but still there's so much evil in the world. So they come. Augustine, he then changes the nature of Satan and says he's a fallen angel, and in that sense, independent entity, but not, he's not, God is the problem is that, you can't have a independent entity besides God, because God is one. So he had to fix this problem like. So he fixed it like this. There's a Satan. He is also trying to get humans to do bad things, and the sin is in ourselves from the sinful.
The fall.
Fall, yeah.
Yeah, the
from
fall.
the fall, yeah. So it's called theodicy.
The theodicy problem.
Theodicy problem, yeah.
Yeah,
and Christianity is still, they're still struggling with this problem. Then.
Yes, because it can seem very cynical. Like, if God is all-knowing and all-loving, how could God deliberately cause people to suffer?
Yeah.
Because, before you were born, God knew your destiny.
Yeah.
According to Christianity, and you could be killed in the first weeks of life during some sort of bomb attack, or you could experience having terrible parents, or a lot of illness, or whatever.
Yeah.
And if God knew that in advance, then is God some kind of sadist?
Yeah, exactly.
So it gives Christianity a big problem, a big thing to explain. So the devil was a very convenient scapegoat.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
According to Martinus, at least, he uses the term devil to describe the consciousness that we have when he talks about devil consciousness, and that's when we combine our intelligence, our developed intelligence, with our animal tendencies.
Exactly.
For example, a creation like the atom bomb, you can't deny that it's pretty ingenious. It's an expression for a lot of intelligence.
Yeah.
But it's not an expression for neighborly love.
No, exactly.
It's really the opposite.
Yeah,
so a creation like that is an example, a rather extreme example of devil consciousness. So.
Yeah, it's an animal that has, with intelligence, prolonged its claws to maintain the killing principle.
Yes, yeah.
So but according to Martinus, we are now in very fast way, you could say, living out the killing principle in our time. In this time of doomsday, we are living out the last remains of this killing principle, because the killing principle is not necessary for us to maintain a good life anymore. It was before, when we were more primitive humans, and it's necessary for animals, of course, because they live by this principle. But it's not necessary for us humankind to kill each other and for example, eat the animals, and we don't need the killing principle anymore to sustain a good life.
Rather the opposite. We need to drop the killing principle in order to have a good life.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
In all respects.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about meat eating, but also intolerance, lack of forgiveness.
Exactly.
Thing.
The mental killing. That's
mental killing.
Yeah.
Blaming others, not seeing your own part in some kind of conflict.
Exactly, and talking bad about others and
gossiping and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Martinus talked about our fate being the result of our relationship to God, because he talks about God as being, in a way, on 3 levels. You could say that he talks about the macrocosmos. That's the enormous world around us, the Earth, the other planets, the solar system, the galaxies, and so on.
Yeah.
And what he calls the mesocosmos, which is other human beings, the animals, the plants on our level of evolution here,
Yeah.
our plane of evolution, so to speak. And then he talks about the microcosmos within us.
Yeah.
And one can say that we suffer on all those levels, like if there's a natural catastrophe, that's the kind of fate we're getting from the macrocosmos.
Yeah.
If the volcano erupts in Iceland, you've probably seen that a lot, then it's the macrocosmos reacting to something that we have in some way done. What it is can be hard to find out. Maybe
conflicting some similar environment in our own organism.
Well, yeah.
Because we are your micro being for our own microcosmic, and they're all living beings.
Yes.
So, for example, if we smoke cigarettes or tobacco and we create a really bad environment, then maybe you could be born in an environment where there's a fabric or a factory which is, very much with smoke and bad air and so on.
Yes.
So in that sense, things are, you're not born by coincidence. You get the physical, you are born the places where you fit in, so to speak, regarding to karma.
Yeah, so you're saying if we've been mistreating our own organism through smoking and,
for example,
using tobacco or drinking a lot of alcohol or taking drugs or something, we're creating natural catastrophes in our microcosmos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which we can in turn experience from our macrocosmos, from the Earth itself.
Yeah, yeah.
In the form of pollution and other natural catastrophes.
Yeah.
But I think, of course, we suffer a lot from illnesses, and that has a lot to do with the way we kill animals and to eat them and so on.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of karma connected with that. And we've had a podcast on the ideal food.
Yeah.
So we won't go into that now, but
back to your question about, the fate and...
Yeah.
And because... What was the question? We were always meeting our fate through meeting God. Was it that you said?
Martinus said in an article I read that our fate is a result of our relationship to God.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because he explains how, like we started out the podcast talking about that there's only one being that exists, and that's God. So we are always meeting God through our environment, through other living beings, through animals, through other humans. So if a person comes to you with bad news, or maybe shouts at you or something, says something that you become hurtful over, then it's a messenger really that's in a way mirroring your own mental state, because it's some energy, some mental state that you have actually in some time created, and then you're meeting this mental state back again to learn that this is not a really nice mental state to create for others. So this is a messenger, and he is a part of God, of course, because God is everything. But you shouldn't kill the messenger. The messenger doesn't really matter in this concept. So I'm used to say to people, you shouldn't take it personal when somebody comes with some unpleasantness, but you should take it deeply personal. So not shooting the messenger, but meditating over and contemplate over what is the message. What am I to learn from this situation? Because there's a message there. There's a teaching. So in every situation in life, God is teaching you all day long. In every situation you meet, every small interaction with animals or other human beings, there's always some teaching going on. And you just have to learn to put your ears out and open your eyes and really, what is God saying to me? What is the teaching? What should I learn from this situation?
So life is really a constant conversation with God.
Constant conversation, yeah.
Yeah.
All day long.
All day long.
And all night long. When you're dreaming as well.
And of course, when one says that, of course, if I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to the whole of God. I'm talking to one part of the God.
Of course.
So.
Yeah, represented.
And sometimes I think about that in relation to prayer, because sometimes you can be very alone with your problems, and maybe there is no one in your surroundings you feel confident to talk to about them.
Yeah.
Because they do only represent a part of this total organism, and maybe not a part that would be a sympathetic ear to whatever it was we needed to talk about. But then there is this telepathic connection to God through prayer.
Yeah.
So you can always go to the boss, so to speak.
Yeah.
If none of the smaller departments of God around are the most appropriate ears for the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about earlier, Mary, that to be able to access God or get the ability to begin to knowledge that God actually exists through cosmic glimpses when you yourself you experience this, and the prayer is actually a very good method to start to build up a communication or a relationship to God, because Martinus explains that we have gone through a atheistic or materialistic evolutionary period. So we have become godless. But all the less we have always an organic connection to God, but we are not conscious in that organic. But when we become spiritual again and we come on the other side of this materialistic evolution period, and we start to wonder again, is there meaning by life? Could it be that there is meaning and life is not random, as science says? And we've begun to start to think about these things. And then he says prayer, meditation or prayer is extremely good for you to get into, because we have to build this organic connection with God and make it stronger. And in the end, we will actually be able to talk to God like we are talking together now, and you can hear God back.
Yes.
But you have to tune your consciousness to God and start to talk to Him. And you can use meditation or prayer in many ways. You can pray for other people and the most important thing for me has been to always use prayer every day to get support and strength to do God's will. To ask God, give me strength so I can try to understand what your will is and try to do your will. Because God is in like it says in the Bible, and Martinus explains, God is actually creating man in his own image.
And what does that mean, to be in the image of God?
Well, that means that we will be able to be fully empathetic and to see the world with God's eyes, to get this cosmic consciousness. And that's not like an end goal. It's like being born into the spiritual world, and then the evolution, of course, continues. But it's like, when you're born into the physical world, and when you get cosmic consciousness, you're actually born into the spiritual world, and you gain fully access, fully day consciousness.
Fully day conscious.
Yeah, access to the spiritual world.
To the spiritual world, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you see every manifestation on the earth, everything around you, as a manifestation of God.
Yeah.
Then only God exists, then nothing else exists.
Yeah.
So then you experience that your everyday life is an interaction with God.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. And you become conscious.
You become conscious of that.
Conscious of that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
exciting
that sounds like a very rosy future.
Yes.
So, for many of us, it's just a theory at the moment. But do you have any tips on how we can get closer to experiencing God as a living reality in our daily lives?
Yes, I have one very important. Don't ever chase after the experience with God. That's not a good idea.
Okay.
It should come. Of course, you should do the prayer and experience and try to. When people come with, like we talked about, people come and they're unpleasant to you, and so just try to show your other cheek, like Jesus said, and that means that you try to meet them with understanding, not by just if somebody stands on your toe, you just want to stand on their toe immediately because it's like an automatic function from the animal kingdom. But you have to try to understand people and meet them in like, okay, he's like he is, and he can't behave otherwise. But Martinus explains it's not a good idea to chase this experience to be one with God. It's like you said, Mary. It should come when you're humble enough and when you have gained empathy in your heart and your mind, and then it comes by itself. Because I know a lot of people, they sit and meditate for 10 hours and then in some years they get a great cosmic experience in their mind. But if their body, the system in the body, the nervous system is not capable of carrying such a strong current, it's not a good idea. So you should never chase it. It will come by itself.
Yeah, that's when you get these meditation psychoses. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah. But one thing you can do, you can start by practicing, and when you're just like walking on the beach or in the city, putting this intention or putting this idea in your head that God is everywhere. Just put this notion in your head. Try to be aware of that you're always meeting God. It's a very good thing to have in your mind that actually you're always meeting God when you meet other people, when you're in the nature, and just try to feel the presence of God. You can do this.
Yes. When the phone rings, it's always God.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I use that a lot because my phone rings a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a useful
God is calling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a useful way of not getting bothered by too many phone calls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you, Tryggvi, for initiating us into the nature of God. Nothing less. A very big subject.
It's a big subject,
Martinus has written a lot about it. So I think we'll wind up this podcast here.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Mary.
Thank you for coming. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah, bye-bye.